Hi. So I'm Sean Cassidy. I'm the CTO at Praesidio. We do cybersecurity for financial institutions. You send us your data, and we tell you whether or not you're hacked. But today, I'm going to be talking about software. We all know software is hard, really, really hard. So hard that it's just we're guaranteed to have bugs in it. You'll never be free of bugs. But really, the big question is why? Why is it hard? It's because it's complex. You know, nobody has team perfect code here, and if you did, it probably wouldn't have PHP on it. But nobody has that, and so what can we do about complexity? So there's this really great paper I like. It's called Out of the Tar Pit. It talks about why software is complex, accidental versus essential complexity. It's really interesting, but I'm not going to be going through the paper in detail, although I'd love to. We're going to be talking about what we can do about managing complexity in our systems. So traditional solutions to managing complexity: testing your software, design review, code review, stuff like that. Monitoring is essential. Documentation is essential. You're going to log. You're going to maybe even use static typing, code contracts. All of these are great ways to manage complexity in your software product. But there's one that I really just want to talk about today. It's logging. It's logging that I think is not utilized enough. So you have all these logs, and all your systems are constantly generating them, writing to your disks on your servers and everything. And what are you doing with them? Are you collecting this information at all? Are you alerting on it? So this is what we're going to be talking about today. Are you buried under this information? Are you just buried under all this data and you don't know what to do with it? So the ideal is going to be you're going to collect them in some central system, you're going to graph them, you're going to alert on them, you're going to be able to take all of this information and act on it. You're going to be able to find faults, you're going to be able to fix them faster, you're going to be able to not roll issues into production. So how to start? So this is the basics. What you're going to do is you're going to write after you've collected all of your logs together in some solution, you're going to write some queries to watch what you're interested in. So one example I have here is you're going to monitor all the logs at debug level, right? And so what we have here is we have a query, and we're going to graph how many debug logs we got from all of our systems. This is across every single application. And you can see we were getting 50K, and then it was creeping up, and then something happened right before October 1st. Maybe a new system was released, but now that we're now that we're collecting all of this data, we can say, why? Why was this happening? Now that we have the ability to ask these questions. So we want to create some alerts. One of the alerts we want to create is you want to monitor out-of-memory, request timeouts, all of this kind of stuff, and you're going to alert on when there are too many errors in your logs. It's very basic thresholding information. One interesting thing is to do like a common user activity like logins. Like every time you get a login, write to a log, and then monitor that. Are you doing too many? Are the normal people, are the normal amount of logs coming in for that activity, or is it too many or too few? So here's an example that we had in August. So we had, this is our warnings, and we had a bunch of things happening on August 12th and August 13th. A bunch of anomalies were found, and we were kind of scratching our heads. Nothing really seemed to be wrong, and we were investigating. We found some causes, but really what happened is the next day, on August 14th, there was a huge spike in our errors, and if we had been paying attention and doing our full deep investigation, we would have caught this error. Luckily, we already knew what the cause was, so as soon as it happened, it was very easy to mitigate. But if you don't have your logs in one place and if you're not watching this right now, it's very hard to do this sort of quick debug. So here's where you can get a little fancier. So you have a search, like you want to search on level error, but you want to group by host name. So this is like a SQL group by or something. So you're going to get a graph for every single one of your hosts on your network, your EC2 hosts or in your data center. Now you're going to get a graph for every single one. You can then alert on when one host's errors are higher than the average. You can track that sort of thing, alert on it. You can group by lots of different things. So here are some ways you can group specific services. So if you have your login service versus an analytics service, you want to know how your logs are doing on each one of those things. You want to say, okay, well, I have an abnormal amount of errors in this. You can group by dev, test, or production. So you can say, okay, well, I had a high level of errors in dev, and then when we push to test, now we have that same high level of errors. We probably don't want to push it to production. You can group by customer IDs. And you can say, well, this one customer of ours actually has a really high amount of problems. Why is that? Is that they have some poison pill in their data or something? And if you have all this data in a time series, you can track the changes before and after a software release. This is really critical, and it's really great to quickly roll things back if there was this sudden jump in problems. One thing that we like to do is anytime there's an HTTP 500 error, we send an email to our developers saying, this is some customer had a problem right now. We should address it. So every single time there is an HTTP 500, we react to it. And then once you have this, you can start automatically finding anomalies. So your logs are kind of like an assembly line. There's tons and tons of stuff going by, and you are not going to be able to identify the differences in them with traditional, like searching and alerting that are available in many products. What you need to do is you need to actually be able to pull out the patterns that you see in those logs, and then figure out where your differences are. Like, okay, I was getting this sort of logs from this service, but then all of a sudden I was getting this one. And what was that about? And a good logging solution will help you automatically find anomalies. So one thing that will help you debug is adding context to your logs. So here's an example. We're going to be adding a user to our service. We add a new user to the database, we get an ID. And what we're going to do with this ID is every single log message, we're going to print out this ID so that later, when we're debugging it, we can attach this ID to all of our logs and trace it back. So when we see that we added the user to an organization, it will be like, oh, I see, I was adding that user to my organization. And in the exception, we can also print that ID. So you can do this for request IDs, you can do this for thread IDs, you can do this for anything, as long as all of the logs for that method or that action are the same, so you can track them over when you're debugging. And everyone does code review, right? Everybody reviews all their code, of course. And so logging is one thing that really should be a core piece of your code review. Are you logging enough? Are you doing the right thing? And this is something that's important, because when you're debugging a production issue, it's very, very frustrating to have not the right logs there. It's not printing out the information you need to debug your issue. So logs must be a core part of your core review process. Add it to your code review checklist. So when you're doing a log code review, you need to ask, does this method class log enough? Is it logging the things that are going to basically tell a story? Can it be debugged from logs alone? So does it have the right amount of information in it? Does it have the right variables put in it? Does it have the right context associated with it? And like I said, do the logs tell a story? I added the user to the database. I tried to add it to the organization, but the organization didn't exist, and that's why it blew up. Those logs tell a story, and if you have a lot of methods that aren't logging properly, it's very, very challenging to get the right amount of information there. And so what you need to do is you need to put useful information in your logs. You need to put the IDs in there. You need to put the context that you need in there. One interesting thing that we do is we replace assertions in our code, which assertions normally will stop your process. So what we do is we instead replace them with, this thing should never happen. True is no longer true. I added it to the organization, and then I tried to get the organization. It didn't work anymore. So we then log impossible. This shouldn't have happened. And then we alert on impossible. And we were surprised when we added this that it actually was cropping up. And it was causing issues that weren't extremely devastating, but they were enough that we needed to fix them. So we replaced all of our assertions with log error impossible, the title of my talk. And we were definitely surprised to see this cropping up in our logs. So the big thing, cybersecurity. Everyone knows about cybersecurity and how important it is. Logging is amazing for cybersecurity. It is something that you need to do. You need to collect all of your applications logs. You need to collect all of your load balancer logs, intrusion detection logs, firewall logs. And all of this is essential for cybersecurity. So if you're not collecting your application logs and being able to tell when things are happening, you are not secure. So you need to ask yourself, if someone broke into your app or your company, how would you find out? And how would you find out exactly? So they have root on one of your servers, and they're using like an in-memory rootkit or something. How are you going to find out? You're hoping that some sysadmin will stumble in and find something out of place. This is something you need to ask yourself, and you need to think it through like an attacker. They have broken in, and they don't want to be found. So when they break in, how are you going to respond to it? Are you going to do a investigation? Do you even have the information you need to do an investigation? If they broke in a year ago, do you have the logs from a year ago to figure out what they did and all the systems they touched? Because you're going to have to inform all your customers that they broke in. So you need to know all of this information. And if they break in, how are you going to make sure it doesn't happen again? This is a critical thing. It can destroy businesses. You need to make sure that you have great answers to all of these questions. And if you're pretending like everything's fine, it's really, really not. It is not something you can ignore. You have to address this. So logging for security. These are the basics. You want to get web server logs, Nginx, Apache, anything. You want to collect those. Intrusion detection logs. Bro is a great intrusion detection system. I highly recommend it, so is Snort. If you're on the cloud, AWS CloudTrail produces great, amazing logs. And then your application. Your application is a perfect place to mine information. Every single request, you can log the IP address, maybe the HTTP headers. And then once you do that, you say, OK, this IP address interacted with my thing. It was brute forcing, and then they found a login. Great. Now you can tell a story there. And then here's one interesting trick that I like. Every single time you mutate something in your system, a user changes his profile, or you add a new user, having a write-only audit log lets you then say, OK, well, these things happened. And if it's write-only, then nobody can mutate it. And if your log machine is on the same network that was hacked, that's obviously a big problem. So you need to get this log machine outside of your network to somewhere else that you can safely say that the attacker did not get into. So if you need help, this is what we do. All the time, we have a great logging product. It's for generic logging. It's specific for cybersecurity, so it's really great. We have customizable dashboards that tell you where people are connecting to your network. We have dashboards that tell you the types of traffic that we see on your network. We have a great search platform. It works with everything, Java, Ruby, Python. It does Nginx logs. It does CloudTrail, firewalls. It does everything. It does on-prem, cloud. You can build alerts with this really, really easily. So what you can do is you can say, OK, well, I want to find out when people on my office network were uploading too many documents or something. Very easy to do in our product. Integrated threat intelligence. This is something that you're probably not going to get in a traditional logging solution. This is one of the things that we really like. We have Threat Match. And so what this is going to do is every single IP address that you see on your network, or every single file that's transferred, we're going to put that in a database and then correlate it against all of the latest and greatest threat intelligence. Yeah, we know this IP address at this time was brute forcing a lot, and we saw it on your network too, so you might want to investigate that. We can do this really quick and really efficiently. Anomaly detection. This is something that is absolutely critical to modern software security. So this is like the unknown threats. Like the threat intelligence is where the things we know about. We know that this IP address is bad. This is everything that we don't know about. So once you see all these different anomalies, this is like this IP address was sending too much data. It normally doesn't send this much data. Or you had a bunch of IRC traffic on your network. You guys don't normally use IRC. Why are you using IRC? Pattern Scout, our anomaly detection, is going to find out all those problems. We're building out tons of different types of anomaly detection. We have 2 right now, and we're going to be able to detect, these 2 servers were talking to each other. They don't normally talk to each other, so maybe is it an attacker, or could it just be something else? Anomaly detection is absolutely critical. And we have, because we're financial focused, we have built-in policy and incident response. This is a really core part of our product. You can type in your cybersecurity policies. You can correlate them to alerts. You can measure how you're doing on your cybersecurity policies. This is really important because no longer is cybersecurity just an IT issue. In fact, it's a C-level and a board of directors issue. It can destroy businesses. So you need to actively be monitoring this. You need to make sure that you have everything covered and you're monitoring your firewalls. And the way to do that is with our policy tool. An incident response, once you have an incident, you're going to want to be able to track it. You're going to want to measure how long it's taking you. We have a built-in incident management tool. It integrates with our whole solution. You can attach logs and events and evidence and produce a really great report for if and when you do have an incident. So just going through what we support really quick. We support firewalls, intrusion detection and prevention systems, cloud systems like AWS and Azure, Windows event logs, OS X logging, Linux obviously, custom applications, antivirus logs. Really, and for financial institutions, we also support AS400s, mainframes, all that sort of thing too. But really what we support is just about everything. You can throw any type of log at us, and we accept it. So basically, the bottom line, send us your logs, and we will keep you safe. That's it. Any questions?
OK, we have a couple minutes left. So the first question is, what are the largest gaps companies have in their security today?
So there's one major gap, which is the instrumentation gap. When we talk to a lot of companies, they have OK cybersecurity, they have a firewall, they have that sort of thing. Sometimes they even collect their logs, but they don't have the right instrumentation. So they don't have the right intrusion detection logs, they don't have the right firewall logs, and they can't see anything on their network. So all this stuff is happening, they have firewalls blocking things, but they don't know that the firewalls are even blocking things. They're not doing anything with that information. So if they were fully instrumented and they could actually see into their networks, then they could react to problems. And so one of the first things we do is we like to recommend a suite of tools. Praesidio is a layer on top of all of your existing solutions. It's not a new firewall. So we recommend firewalls to purchase and intrusion detection to buy. And once you have those tools in place, we collect all that data, and then we can alert on it and monitor it.
OK. Another question is, what are some mistakes to avoid when it comes to application logging?
The two main problems that I typically see is printing out logs that are just like, oh, processing complete. And processing complete has no information associated with it. It doesn't tell you what process it was doing. It doesn't tell you how long it took. It doesn't tell you anything except that it did it. And that's really frustrating when you have a production issue and you're like, I know you did it, but I don't know what you did. And so including the right context in there is really important.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, no, if you go ahead.
Okay. The other thing that I sometimes see is logging too much, just producing tons of garbage, and that can be really, really frustrating because you're trying to debug this issue. All of your servers are on fire, and you need to just get to the right thing. But there was this tight loop in there, and it was just constantly logging. Very, very frustrating.
OK. We have time for one more. So you may have already answered this, but a couple people came in late. What are the sorts of tools you would recommend for collecting logs?
So if you're going to do it on your own, so like obviously your application is logging, so like Log4j for Java, and Python is great logging. So once you're doing all of that, you want to collect it into one central place. The ELK stack is a really interesting thing if you want to do it on your own. It's pretty hard to manage. Elasticsearch is a complicated tool, but if you can get it going and if you can dedicate resources to it, it's a good system. Really what you want to do is you want to collect all of your logs. So like if you're running in AWS, enable CloudTrail, enable S3 bucket logging, and collect those logs. Don't just dump them in S3. Put them in your logging system. And that can be a little bit of a challenge. Luckily, we support that.